On quiet nights, when every sound seems to fall away into the distance, and all that remains is the soft rhythm of your own breathing. Cancer often drifts into a space that's hard to name. You've always been perceptive. You hear what isn't said. You notice the smallest crack in someone's smile. You're the one who steps forward first, places a gentle hand on someone's shoulder, asks a question soft enough so they don't feel ashamed for being fragile. And yet, there are days when you find yourself standing in an empty space, not because no one is around, not because you aren't loved, but when your heart grows heavy, you tend to close in before anyone has the chance to see it. You stay quiet, as if holding your sadness inside might keep it from disturbing the world. Cancer rarely says outright, I need a hug. I need someone to check in. I need someone to really be here. You don't want to shift the mood. You don't want to be seen as too sensitive. You don't want to explain something you instinctively understand in others. So you smile. You answer the texts. You make sure everyone's fed. You listen, as if you were never tired at all. And because you keep showing up, people assume you're fine. They trust in your gentle strength. They're used to Cancer being warm enough to keep everyone else from freezing. And they forget even the softest flame needs shelter when the wind picks up. Maybe you've asked yourself, very quietly, if I'm always the one who stays, always the one who holds space, then when I'm exhausted, who will sit beside me without needing an explanation? It's not a loud question. It doesn't demand attention. It shows up in the stillness, when the lights are off, and your mind grows more honest than it is during the day. But that feeling isn't necessarily proof that the world has turned its back on you. Sometimes, it simply reflects a long-standing habit. You're used to anticipating what others need before they even realize it themselves. You give so naturally people think it's an endless instinct, and you wait, quietly, for someone to do the same for you. Forgetting not everyone speaks the language of silence. Cancer's sadness can feel like the tide. During the day, it pulls far back, revealing calm sand. At night, it rises again, carrying questions you never quite said out loud. And in that ebb and flow, you learn how to soothe yourself. You learn how to be strong in your own way. A strength that doesn't announce itself. So a strength that doesn't need applause. But even that kind of strength can grow tired. Not because you're weak, but because you always place yourself in the position of carrying first. You believe love means caring, listening, staying. You do it with sincerity, fully. And when the response doesn't arrive the way you quietly hoped, a hollow feeling slips in, subtle, but deep enough to feel. Maybe Cancer's journey isn't about giving less. Maybe it's about allowing yourself to be seen when you're weary, not through complaints, but through gentle honesty. A simple sentence like, "I'm a little tired today," can open a different kind of door. Not everyone will notice your silence, but some people, when given the chance, are willing to step closer. And maybe the question, "Who will be there for me?" doesn't have to carry resentment. And maybe it becomes a soft reminder that you deserve to be heard, to be held, to lean into someone's shoulder without having to prove how strong you've been. In this stillness, as you sit with yourself, perhaps the point isn't to find the answer right away. Perhaps it's simply to let your heart speak a little more truthfully. And when your heart begins to open in its own quiet way, something subtle starts to shift in how you show up in the world, as if a warm current is moving gently through your deepest corners, waiting for you to keep listening and take one more step into the story still unfolding ahead. And then, as you begin to notice the smallest movements inside your own heart, something slowly becomes clearer than ever before. Cancer doesn't just love through words. You love through presence, a quiet kind of presence, but deep. Is it like a soft yellow kitchen light left on after everyone else has gone to bed? So if someone wakes up thirsty at midnight, they don't have to stumble through the dark. You remember the details others forget. You notice when someone's voice drops, even if they're still smiling. You feel the unusual pause between two text messages. To you, the smallest shifts matter. And when someone steps into your safe space, they often feel seen, heard, without having to defend themselves. So it's no surprise that people come to you when they feel unsteady. You become a refuge for tired souls. You sit there, patiently. You don't interrupt. You don't judge. You don't try to fix them. You just stay. And sometimes, that alone is a profound gift. But something subtle happens along the way. When people grow used to you always understanding, always sensing, always forgiving, they begin to assume you're fine. They believe you're strong in a way that doesn't require checking in. They see you as the shoulder, not the one who needs a shoulder. It's not that they don't care. It's that the image you've built is so steady, so reliable. It feels unshakable. Cancer is strong in a soft way. You don't announce how much you're carrying. You don't measure your endurance out loud. You just keep going. And sometimes, that quiet resilience makes your own needs invisible. You often tell yourself, if I can still help, I will. If I can still listen, I will. You believe love means giving without keeping score. But there are nights, after everyone else's stories have been told, when you feel lighter, not because you're at peace, but because something inside feels emptied out. That feeling isn't resentment. It's not bitterness. It's simply the realization that you've given so much without pausing to ask how much you have left. You're like a house with the door always open. Anyone who enters is welcomed warmly, but not many people stop to think that the house also needs sweeping, repairing, and sometimes rest. Maybe you've felt tired before and said nothing. Maybe you've quietly hoped someone would ask a little deeper. Maybe you've wished that the care you offer so freely would be returned in a similar spirit. Not perfectly, just sincerely. And when that doesn't happen, you don't accuse. You don't demand. You simply grow quieter. You keep playing your role well. But somewhere inside, a small voice wonders, have I unintentionally taught people that I don't need care? Cancer, becoming an emotional home for others, is beautiful. It reflects an open heart and a rare capacity for empathy. But even the warmest home needs to close its door at times, not to reject love, but to protect the light within. Maybe your journey isn't about loving less or becoming someone colder. Maybe it's about recognizing that your presence has value and that value deserves protection. As you continue listening to others, perhaps it's worth asking what you need too. As you help someone through their storm, perhaps it's worth glancing at your own sky and noticing if the clouds have grown too heavy. And in the moment you allow yourself to be seen as a human being, not just a support system, another door may open. Not because you've changed your nature, but because you've begun to honor your energy more consciously. The flow of Cancer's love has always been beautiful, but when that flow is guided by awareness, it's no longer silent self-draining. It becomes intentional giving, chosen giving. And perhaps, as you begin to balance giving and receiving, listening and being listened to, the connections around you start to shift in tone, lighter, more real, as if your heart is preparing to take one deeper breath and step further into a story still unfolding beneath the soft glow of the night. And as you begin to realize that the way you love needs to be guided by a little more awareness, a familiar pattern slowly comes into view under the soft light of the night. There is something very Cancer about it, very quiet, very hard to put into words. You don't want to have to ask. You want to be understood without explaining. You believe that if care runs deep enough, someone will simply feel what you haven't said. It's a beautiful belief. It mirrors the way you love others. Because you notice the smallest signals. A passing sigh. A shorter reply than usual. Eyes that seem just a little more tired than they admit. For you, care doesn't need to be labeled. It's sensed, felt through intuition. So somewhere deep inside, you hope others will do the same for you. That they'll notice when your voice slows down. Why, that they'll ask one more question when you say you're fine, but your eyes drift elsewhere. That they'll sit beside you when your silence lingers a little longer than usual. And sometimes, that does happen. There are people perceptive enough to see you beyond your words. In those moments, your heart softens. It feels as though someone has touched the most fragile part of you without forcing you to explain it. But life doesn't always move at that sensitive rhythm. Many people truly care about you. They just don't speak the language of silence. They need clear words, specific signals. And when you don't send those signals, they assume everything is steady. And so a quiet cycle forms. You wait, in silence. You endure, in silence. And eventually, you feel disappointed. In silence. Not the explosive kind, not sharp accusations. Just a subtle distance that appears. You pull back a little. You share a little less. You keep more to yourself. Cancer doesn't rage loudly. You withdraw like a wave, slowly retreating from the shore, softly, but enough to leave an empty space others may not immediately notice. You're still present, still listening, still caring. You just don't open the door as wide as you once did. And in those rare moments when you consider speaking up, an old fear brushes against you. What if I say I'm tired, and they still don't stay? What if I admit I'm hurting, and no one steps closer? If I place my heart in the light and that light isn't met, where does that fragile part of me go? That fear isn't weakness. It comes from the times you did open up and didn't receive the presence you quietly hoped for. With a heart as deep as Cancer's, when those moments aren't loud, but they leave long marks. And so you choose the safer path. You hold everything yourself. You process it yourself. You soothe yourself. There is strength in that, but there's also a delicate loneliness that comes with it. Because when you're always the one handling your own storms, others have fewer chances to see the human being who sometimes needs shelter, not because they wouldn't stay, but because they don't know you need them to. Perhaps on a deeper level, this isn't about who's right or wrong. It's more like two languages trying to say the same thing. You speak in feeling, they listen for words, you wait for a glance, they wait for a clear sentence. And maybe the shift isn't about becoming someone entirely different. Maybe it's just a little courage to say more clearly what you need, not to demand. But to invite. Not to force someone to stay, but to give those who want to stay a way to understand how. In this quiet space, as you sit with yourself, perhaps the real question isn't only who will notice when I'm silent, but also, am I allowing anyone to notice? And as that thought brushes your heart like the softest breeze, you may feel something inside beginning to shift, opening toward a different kind of connection, gentler, more honest, as if the story is still flowing forward, carried by a current that's a little deeper now, a little warmer, and still unfolding in the quiet glow of the night. And when you begin to open your heart a little more clearly, that journey often reaches deepest in love and in your closest relationships. That's where Cancer so naturally steps into the role of the caregiver without anyone ever assigning it. You remember anniversaries. You remember their favorite meal. You remember something they said casually on a windy afternoon months ago. You care through action more than promises. You express love in small, steady ways, like water flowing quietly year after year. In your world, love means paying attention. Love means showing up. Love means placing someone else's safety right beside, or sometimes even before, your own comfort. You don't need grand performances. You need consistency, a bond that holds. And you offer that with all the sincerity your heart can carry. But when that care repeats itself year after year, something subtle can happen. The other person grows used to it. They grow used to you remembering, preparing, checking in. Not because they mean to take it lightly, but because your steadiness makes it feel natural, like the sun rising each morning. Few people pause to think about what it takes for the sun to burn. And so, while you continue giving quietly, you begin to sense something slightly out of rhythm, not a lack of love, but a lack of reciprocity. You carry them through difficult days, but when you falter, there isn't always a hand resting gently on your back. When Cancer needs comfort, you're not looking for solutions. You don't need a lecture on how to fix it. You just need someone to sit close enough that you don't feel alone in figuring it out. A simple sentence like, "I'm here. Do you want to talk?" can dissolve so many layers of armor. But if what you receive instead is distraction or a quick reply before the subject shifts, your heart pauses, not loudly, not with accusation, just a quiet ache, as if maybe you poured your heart into a space not quite wide enough to hold it. That kind of pain is uniquely yours, because Cancer doesn't love halfway. You don't care casually. When you choose someone, you give with devotion. And when that devotion isn't fully seen, you don't explode. You withdraw just a little, as if your heart is learning how to protect itself. There are nights you might wonder, am I loving more than I should? Have I turned care into something they simply expect? But maybe the issue isn't that you love too deeply. Maybe it's that you haven't clearly said you need to be loved in a similar way. Love isn't a transaction. It's not measured in equal portions. Well, but it isn't meant to be one-sided either. When you're always the giver, you might unintentionally allow someone to forget that you are human too, that you have fragile days, that you have moments when you want to lean into a warm shoulder. Perhaps your journey in love isn't about becoming less gentle. Perhaps it's about giving that gentleness a boundary. So when you care for someone, you still have energy left for yourself. So when you ask them how their day was, you can also say honestly, "I'm a little tired today." And maybe when you allow yourself to be seen even in your softer moments, the relationship gains a chance to grow more real. No longer one person always protecting and the other always protected, but two human beings learning how to carry each other through different stretches of the road. And in the slow rhythm of this reflection, you may begin to realize your heart was never wrong for loving so deeply. It has simply been searching for a space safe enough to stay open, without being treated as something automatic. And from there, new thoughts begin to drift in, as if your emotions still want to guide you a little further into something deeper, still unfolding in the quiet glow of the night. And as you slowly realize that your heart was never wrong for loving that deeply, something subtle begins to shift inside you. Not a loud transformation, not a dramatic decision to cut people off or walk away, just a gentle adjustment in the way you show up for yourself and for others. That adjustment doesn't ask you to become less tender. It doesn't require you to harden your edges. Or Cancer doesn't need to lose its nature in order to be protected. What may be needed instead is learning how to set boundaries, like wrapping your own arms around yourself before reaching out to the world. Boundaries are not tall walls that keep everyone out. They aren't distance. They're more like a door on hinges, able to open, able to close, depending on your energy, your rhythm, your emotional weather. A boundary is saying, "I need to rest," without guilt. It's admitting, "I don't have the capacity to hold another heavy story tonight." Maybe in the past, you were used to stretching just a little more, smiling just a little longer, saying you're fine, one more time. But deep down, your body and your soul have always known where the limit is. And when you begin to honor that limit, you don't become selfish. You become honest. When there are sentences that seem small but quietly open new doors. "I'm not okay today. I need you to just listen for a moment. I don't want to hold it all together right now. I need some time for myself." Those words don't weaken you. They make you real. And when you clearly express your needs, you offer others something powerful, a chance to stay fully, a chance to understand you instead of guessing you. Not everyone will step into that space, but the ones who enter with respect often bring a different kind of connection, deeper, more balanced. Cancer also learns to discern, not to doubt everyone, but to recognize. Who listens because they love you, who listens only when it's convenient, who stays when you're fragile, who shows up only when they need to unload. The differences can be subtle, but your heart is sensitive enough to feel them. You don't have to tell your entire life story to everyone. You don't have to expose your whole inner world just to prove you're sincere. What matters more is knowing who you're speaking to. Speaking truth to the right person can create a sense of safety that silence never could. Silence once protected you, but sometimes it also created invisible distance. When you begin replacing silence with a few clear words, you don't lose your depth. You simply give the relationship a chance to grow on something more solid. You may notice that not everyone is comfortable with this version of Cancer, the one who names their needs. Some may feel confused, some may need time, some may drift away. But those shifts are not always losses. Sometimes they're just a rearranging of energy, so that those who truly align can move closer. When you protect your kindness with boundaries, you're not closing your heart. You're keeping it from burning out. You're ensuring that each time you open it, it's a choice, not a habit of self-sacrifice. And somewhere in that process, you may begin to feel yourself growing, quietly. No longer the house with the door open through every storm, but a warm space that knows when to leave the light on and when to dim it to rest. From that place, when you look at your relationships again, you may sense a subtle change. Not in the world first, but in the way you step into it. And as that step becomes steadier, gentler toward yourself, a new feeling begins to form. And as if your heart is preparing to understand something deeper still about the meaning of the loneliness that once walked beside you for so long. And as your heart begins to understand something deeper about the loneliness that has walked beside you for so long, a gentle message starts to rise, like a thin line of light at the end of a dark road. Cancer, being the one who gives, was never wrong. It has always been a real gift you carry into every relationship. You offer care the way you breathe, naturally, without calculation. But every gift needs a safe place to rest. Otherwise, it can be used until it quietly wears down without anyone noticing. Your kindness, your devotion, your ability to listen without judgment. These are precious. And what is precious was never meant to be drained in silence. Maybe the deeper truth isn't that the world has turned its back, and it isn't that someone intentionally abandoned you. Sometimes the message is simpler. You deserve support before you collapse. You don't have to reach exhaustion to be asked how you're doing. You don't have to fall apart to be worthy of someone's hand. For a long time, you may have grown used to being the anchor, the one who stabilizes everyone else's emotions. But when you begin to name your needs, when you set gentle boundaries, when you choose more carefully who enters your inner world, you may feel a subtle shift. Not because the people around you suddenly become perfect. The world is still the world, with depth and awkwardness and human flaws. But you are different. You no longer pour your entire energy into places that don't know how to hold it. You no longer leave the door wide open for those who only stop by to warm themselves and then leave. When you choose the right person to open up to, you begin to see that support isn't a luxury. It's not dramatic. It's not loud. It's steady presence, a knowing look, a hand resting gently at the right moment. And in those moments, you no longer feel like you have to prove your pain to have it acknowledged. Cancer doesn't need to perform a breakdown to be loved. You don't need to magnify your sadness just so someone believes it deserves attention. Your heart, whether calm or trembling, is worthy of sincere care. And slowly, that late-night question that once echoed quietly, "Who will be there for me?" begins to change its tone. It is no longer silent suffering. It becomes a gentle standard you set for your life. I will stay with those who know how to stay with me. I will open up to those who aren't afraid of my softness. I will give, but I will also keep a little warmth for myself. That choice doesn't make you harder. It makes you steadier, in a soft way. You are still Cancer, emotional, deep, loving with your whole heart. Only now you understand that love also needs direction. It needs balance. It needs quiet self-respect. In the slow rhythm of this reflection, you might feel a sense of peace opening somewhere inside. Not because every question has been answered, but because you're beginning to trust that you don't have to trade yourself to keep a relationship. You don't have to be home for everyone, if it means forgetting the room inside that belongs to you. And as you continue your journey, with a heart still warm, but now willing to hold itself first, you may realize that the most beautiful companionship isn't something promised. It's something chosen. Chosen each day, through awareness, through mutual respect, like a calm river that keeps flowing, carrying you toward deeper connections, where your heart no longer has to brace itself alone, but can finally breathe in a space wide enough to both give and be gently held.